This is the 6th video in my series on beginner acoustic guitar. Today we are going to cover minor chords. So first of all, what are minor chords? Minor chords are very similar to major chords, which we've covered in our last 2 lessons in this series, except for one small difference, which we're going to get to in a second. If you haven't seen the videos leading up to this lesson, I would recommend going back and watching those. A lot of the things that we've covered in those previous 5 lessons are going to come into play here, from our major and minor scales that we've practiced, and all of the intervals, the distances between notes that are associated with those scales, and also the construction of our major chords, which we've been looking at in our last couple of videos. That's all going to come into play here. So we're building off of those previous lessons here. Today, I want to take 3 major chord shapes, and I want to see how, with just slight modification, we can turn those major chords into minor chords. Up until this point, we have played a C major chord, an A major chord, a G major chord, an E major chord, and a D major chord. Those 5 chord forms are often referred to as our caged system. Caged obviously being an acronym for our different forms that we have, C, A, G, E, D. What we're going to look at today is we're going to see how, of those 5 caged forms that we have for our major chords, 3 of them are going to be very easily turned from major chords to minor chords. When we've been building our major chords, through that process we've learned that the 3 notes that make up a major chord are a root, a major third, and a fifth. Well, as you can probably guess, the one note that we're going to alter from a major chord into a minor chord is going to be the third. We're going to use a minor third instead of a major third, okay? So if we look at, let's say, our C major chord, okay, the first of that 5 chord caged system. Here's a C major chord. Now, as we've established in our previous lessons, the 3 notes that build up a C major chord are C is our root, E is our major third, and G is our fifth. So a C major chord is C, E, and G. That means if we want to turn C major into C minor, we need to locate all of the E, in this case, E notes, the major third notes, and lower them by 1/2 step to go from a major third, do, mi, do, mi, do, mi, in this case C to E, do, mi, do, mi, do, mi. We need to lower that E into turn it into an E flat to make it do, me, do, me, do, me, a minor third. That would be a C minor chord. So if we look at this C form of the chord C, I'm going to go through, like we have in our previous lessons, and I'm just going to say the names of the notes as I play them. E, C, E, G, C, E. So as you can probably tell from that, we have a lot of thirds in this form of C major. It's going to be very difficult to turn this C major form into a C minor form. So for now, we're going to skip this and we're going to keep moving on. The next form we have is A major. Remember how to play A major. 2nd fret of our D, 2nd fret of our G, and 2nd fret of our B. Well, the notes that make up an A major chord, A is our root, C sharp is our major third, and E is our fifth. A, C sharp, and E. Do, mi, so. Which means if we want to turn a major into a minor, we need to locate all of the thirds, in this case, all the C sharp notes, and lower them by 1/2 step to turn it into do, me, do, me, do, me, A, and C, C natural. So if I go through this form of A major, again, I'm going to say all of the notes that we've got ringing out here. E, A, C sharp, E. In this form, we only have 1/3. We have 1 C sharp note, which my pinky finger, in this case, is playing on the B string. That's the note C sharp. So if we want to turn A major into A minor, the only thing we have to do is move this note, located at C sharp, down a half step to C. So now our finger position is going to look like this. I've got my second finger on the second fret of the D string. I've skipped the E in the A string. I've got my third finger, my ring finger, on the second fret of the G string. And then lastly, I have my first finger on the first fret of the B string. That's the note that has been lowered. It's gone from C sharp to C. And I'm just letting those other strings, the open strings, ring out. So here I've got A minor. That means the notes that I'm playing now are E, A, C, E. The intervals that those would be in relationship to the chord are now fifth, root, third, the minor third, and then our fifth again. All right, so there's our A form turned from A major into A minor. All right, next we're going to look at our G form. Here's the chord G major. All right, let's go through this and talk about the notes that are in this form. Well, the notes that build up a G major chord are G is our root, B is our major third, and then D is our fifth. Do, mi, sol, G, B, D, root, major third, fifth. That means we're going to be taking all of the B notes, which are the major third, and we're going to be lowering that note to B flat, okay? Do, mi, sol, that's major. Do, mi, sol, that would be minor. So I'm going to go through this chord here and say all of the names of the notes that are in this form. I've got G, B, D, G, B, G. All right, let's go through that. The third, the note B, those are the notes we're going to have to lower. So I've got a third here on the A string. That could be lowered. And I also have a third that I need to lower on my open B string. Well, that's going to be hard to do. We could do that. It's going to be a little bit of finagling with our fingers to make that happen. We could, but it's going to be kind of difficult. As a bit of a sidebar here, if we wanted to make that happen, one thing that we could do, draw my pick here, is we could take our third finger and put it on the third fret of the B string, play this version of G that we talked about in a previous lesson. Or instead of playing that open B string, our third, we're playing our third fret of our B string, which is now the note D. That's our fifth. We could do that, and then we could just lower this third here. That could work. That's a way to do it. That would be a G minor chord. But having that open B string would be kind of tricky. That's the way that I would say we should alter this G form if we want to turn it into minor. Play that third fret of our B and then lower the third there. All right, so now that's C form, A form, and G form. Now we're going to go on to E form. So here's E major. The notes that build up that E major chord are E is our root, G sharp is our major third, and B is our fifth, okay? So E, G sharp, and B. Now, again, same thing. I'm going to go through the notes that are in this E major form. We've got E, so that's our root. We've got B, there's our fifth. We've got E again, another root. G sharp, that's our major third. B, that's our fifth. E, another root. So if you notice, the 1/3 we have there is the note that my first finger is playing on the first fret of the G string. Which means if I want to turn this chord from E major into E minor, all I have to do is pick up that first finger and have that open G string ring out. So there's E minor. E major, E minor, major, minor. And you can see that works because the only third in this chord is the note my first finger's playing. And when I want to lower that to turn that into a minor third, I just pick it up. There's E minor, E major, E minor. Super simple. All right, the last form we have is our D form. So here's D major. The notes that make up a D major chord are D is our root, F sharp is our major third, and A is our fifth. Do, mi, sol, root, major third, fifth, D, F sharp, A. If I go through this chord, I'm gonna skip my E string, okay? And we're just gonna, because remember when we talked about playing that previously, we can either skip that E string because E isn't in that chord, right? D, F sharp, and A. Or we could play the second fret here with our thumb to get that third in there, that F sharp. And if we want to turn this into a minor chord, the less thirds the better, right? Which means we always know we can either lower this with our thumb, lower that third to turn it into a minor third, or we could leave the note out, okay? So skipping that, we've got A, D, F sharp. Which means we have fifth, root, third. So the only note I need to change to turn this into D minor is this third that's up top, right? So I need to move this note from F sharp to F. So I need to move my fingers around a little bit, right? Oh, second time I've dropped my pick today. I can't just do that by lowering that finger. It's not gonna work. I've gotta swap my fingers around. So now I've got my second finger on the second fret of my G string. I've got my third finger on the third fret of my B string, and I have my first finger now on the first fret of my high E string. That's gonna be D minor, okay? And again, if we wanted to play that low E, this would be the third, so we have to lower that to the first fret now. Because again, as we know, our lowest string and our highest string, they're both tuned to the same note, right? They're both tuned to E. So whatever we see up here, we're probably gonna see down here. All right, so that right there is taking our 5 caged chord shapes, C form, A form, G form, E form, and D form, and seeing how we can turn those into minor chords. So to go through them one more time, C isn't really gonna work, right? It's gonna be, we could have a separate lesson on how we could maybe do that, but it's gonna be tricky. There's a lot of thirds in there, right? A form is really easy. We just take this note on our B string and we lower it to this note. Simple enough. For G form, same kind of thing, right? We could do a little messing around and make that happen, like we saw earlier in this lesson. But for now, we'll skip that. E. Here's E major. To turn E major into E minor, all we got to do is lift up that first finger. There's the third. And then lastly, we've got D major turns into D minor. Simple enough. So that right there is a quick rundown on how we can take some basic major chord shapes that we already know on the guitar and turn them into minor chords. The only difference between a major chord and a minor chord is the third. A major chord has, unsurprisingly, a major third in there, and a minor chord has a minor third. So a minor chord is built up of a root, a minor third, and a fifth. I hope this helps, and I will see you in the next lesson.